Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure as president of Gustavus Adolphus College to welcome you to this afternoon's seminar honoring His Majesty King Carl XVI Gustaf of Sweden. This has been a magnificent day, my goodness, on campus. So many activities, and it's a wonderful opportunity to end the day discussing something that is so important to the college and to Sweden. The title of the seminar is From Global to Local, Teaching and Living Environmental Sustainability. It is now my honor to invite you to stand and face the back of the auditorium as we welcome His Majesty King Carl XVI Gustaf of Sweden. Your Majesty, it is our great distinction and honor to hold this seminar today on the Gustavus Adolphus College campus to share with you and others gathered here how Sweden and Gustavus are linked inseparably in our commitments to environmental sustainability. Before we proceed, I would like to thank the string quartet who provided our music today prior to the entrance. Let's thank them. All of them are Gustavus students. Our panel today includes Margaret Anderson Kelleher, a 1990 graduate of Gustavus who serves as president and CEO of Minnesota High Tech Association. Now, the other great thing about Margaret is that she served this great state as Speaker of the House and is an individual that we look to at Gustavus as giving us an opportunity to have a linkage to the greater aspect of this entire state. Margaret, thank you for this. Those making presentations are, to my right, Dr. Jeff Jeremiason, Associate Professor of Chemistry and Director of the college's Environmental Studies program. Next is Christy Morris, Gustavus alum, class of 1977, and CEO of the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. On this side is Alex Christensen, Gustavus student, class of 2013. And next, of course, to Alex is the ambassador of Sweden, the Swedish Ambassador of the United States, Ambassador Hafström. I would now like to turn today's seminar over to Margaret Anderson Kelleher and have her share with you how the panel discussion today will be conducted.
His Majesty, Ambassador Hafström, President Olli, and distinguished guests, friends, and students here at the college, good afternoon. Today we are going to gather for a broader perspective on a challenge that our world faces. I, however, want to start us just very briefly to center ourselves after we got out of that wind and to hear again from our State Poet Laureate, Dr. Joyce Sutphin, also faculty here at Gustavus. The seed. The same seed sleeping in its granary is hard and tight and dry. It only moves when the shovel dips into the bin, and it follows that flow and fills the hollow in. The same seed, sliding to the granary floor, is lifted up and scooped into the sack. It nestles in the gunny cloth, then rides the air up in its back. It slides in the cedar, and it bumps its way across the harrowed field, slipping through the wooden sieve, packed in earth and set to live. The same seed, dreaming in the cold, wet ground, is loosened by the fingers made of rain. It feels a crackling along its seam and becomes the force of green again. Joyce's words set us on a path to be able to think about sustainability. In the light of centuries of human effect on the planet, these wicked problems that we face are daunting, and they include and are not limited to the loss of biodiversity and changes around how we feed a growing world, but also around energy and the reality of global climate change. His Majesty has dedicated much of his life to understanding, bringing others together to tackle and solve these large-scale problems, societal challenges that we all face. Sustainable development is a key domestic and foreign objective of the government of Sweden. Swedish citizens, politicians, and businesses work in different ways to advance environmental sustainability. Through this panel, we will connect to the work of Sweden and the globe. We will start by connecting to the work at Gustavus, the education and scholarship that are building the community around sustainability. We will also hear how global climate challenges are being addressed through philanthropy, as well as finally hearing more about Sweden's leadership within the country and around the world to sustain our planet. After hearing from the panel, we'll make sure there's some time for questions from all of you. There should be question cards that will be distributed at some point during the seminar, and you'll each have a few minutes to talk to each other after the panel presents to be able to react to what you've heard before we get into the question and answer period. First, I'm going to introduce all of our panelists, and then after, we are going to start in the order that I introduced them with their formal comments. I'm so pleased to introduce to you Alex Christensen. He is a senior environmental studies major and peace studies minor here at the college from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's been involved on campus in I Am, We Are Social Justice Theater Troupe, the Campus Activities Board, as well as Culture and Diversity Chair of the Board, and Big Hill Farm. In the fall of 2011, he traveled on the Gustavus Seminar to India program. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Jeff Jeremiahson is Associate Professor of Chemistry and Director of the Program of Environmental Studies here at the college. Dr. Jeremiahson received his bachelor's degree from Augustana College and a master's and PhD from the University of Minnesota. His most recent research sites include Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Marcel Experimental Forest, Voyageurs National Park, and 7 Mile Creek Watershed. Christine Morris, also Christy Morris. Christy Morris is the chair and CEO of the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation, the Anne Ray Charitable Trust, and the Akola Resource Foundation, grant-making charities founded by the late Margaret A. Cargill. Ms. Morris graduated from Gustavus Adolphus College in 1977 with a BA in accounting. She has served on the college's board of trustees and as a visiting instructor, teaching classes in accounting, finance, economics, and management. Environment is one of the key focus areas of the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. The Environment Program supports initiatives ranging from protecting large ecosystems around the globe to promoting sustainable practices by individuals. We're so glad that you're with us today. And finally, Ambassador Jonas Hafström. Ambassador Hafström has been serving in Washington, D.C. since 2007, following 3 years as Ambassador of Sweden to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. His work following the tsunami in Southeast Asia earned him the Seraphim Medal from His Majesty the King in 2008. Prior to those positions, he was Deputy Director, Consular Affairs, and Civil Law at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Stockholm, Policy Advisor to Prime Minister Carl Bildt, Press Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Justice, First Secretary at the Embassy in Tehran in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Hafström is a non-commissioned reserve captain of the Swedish Army and served as aide-de-camp to the Swedish commanding officer at the United Nations peacekeeping operations in the Middle East. Thank you so much for being here. And we are going to start with each of our guests coming to the podium to give their remarks. Alex, please join me at the podium.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. Thank you especially to His Majesty for choosing such a prudent and salient topic. I want to share something of my experiences being an environmental studies major here at Gustavus. I came into my first year here knowing exactly what I wanted to major in. I attribute this certainty, a certainty that few of my fellow first years seem to share, to my connection with environmental studies as a discipline. My upbringing was infused with environmental activism and focus. My mother brought me to my first protest when I was 2 months old, and discussions around the dinner table frequently revolved around where our food came from. And what this did to me, what I've been realizing in my first 3 years in college, is that environmental studies is not really a discipline. That word is too limiting. Environmental studies connects everything. It is the study of the environment, and the environment is all around us, connecting and defining our lives. This interconnection is clear in the list of courses offered for my major. I have taken political science, philosophy, English, science, anthropology, economics, geography, and history classes here that all address the same issues and ideas, but from completely different perspectives. Now that I'm nearing the end of my time at Gustavus, I realize that this is what liberal arts college is about. By incorporating all of these understandings of our world into me, I approach a more holistic view. As a college student, I find the most consistent obstacle to holistic thinking is a phenomenon called the bubble. The bubble is a psychosocial effect of living, eating, working, learning, and loving within a defined geographical space. We get so caught up in our homework and social lives and our genuine interest in bettering our community that we lose sight of the larger communities around us. Most immediately outside Gustavus's bubble is the city of St. Peter. I know too many students, and I used to be one myself, who have never explored St. Peter. This disconnect does not stem from any malice between students and citizens. It is simply a lack of connection, of integration. But all bubbles must burst, and it brings me joy to see Gustavus taking initiative in that work. Events and projects like last year's January speaker series on the 1862 Dakota-U.S. War, which brought an unprecedented number of St. Peter residents up to campus to share history and begin difficult healing. This fall's prairie dedication in the Arboretum is another example, as it has improved accessibility and welcome to the shared environment between Gustavus and St. Peter and reaffirms the college's connection to its ecological roots. Annual events like the Nobel Conference are an unparalleled reminder that Gustavus is not the only thing students should be thinking about, that there is a world out there full of people and pain, and only through recognition of our connection can we find our purpose. For me, purpose came through studying abroad. I spent the fall semester of my sophomore year in India on a program called Social Justice, Peace, and Development. In those 3.5 months, my assumptions about many things were challenged. Many noble ideas about science, nature, and human progress were redefined. It was an uncomfortable and life-changing process. In reflecting on it now, I realized that my rationalized ignorance was challenged most effectively by people I trusted and loved. people I considered part of my community. In community, there is trust. In trust, there is vulnerability, and in vulnerability, there is room for growth. I had to go halfway around the world to realize that I could have changed just as much by establishing community where I was. And here I am now. Gustavus is my most immediate community, and I love it every day. And I am trusting my community. I make myself vulnerable to our potential failure when I say we have a lot of work to do. There are simple things we can be doing to better our community. Why do we sell disposable water bottles after we spent so much money installing water stations all over campus? Why are there lights on in locked, empty buildings at night? And perhaps most poignant to me now, working on Big Hill Farm, is our food, which we rightly celebrate as some of the best in the nation. Why do Gustavus students throw away 400 pounds of it every day? The list goes on. Quite simply, we have to do better to live responsibly, and we can. But I believe it will require fostering of trust, an exploration of vulnerability, and a commitment to healthy growth. Environmental studies is not an isolated discipline. It is not just about the non-human world. It cannot be. It is about environment, about communities at all levels, living and non-living things that interact every day in extraordinarily complex ways. I am forever grateful for the opportunities Gustavus has granted me to witness the beauty in that complexity, and to cultivate it and contribute to it however I can, wherever I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Dr. Jeremiahson.
Thank you, Margaret, and it is my honor to be in the presence of His Majesty and Ambassador Hafström at this very important and timely summit. Environmental sustainability and protection has long been a passion of mine, and Gustavus and Sweden are two places that I love. We honor our Swedish heritage by pursuing environmental protection and sustainability, which has long been a Swedish hallmark. I had the honor of living in Sweden with my family for a year while on leave from Gustavus in the 2008-2009 academic year. I just want to tell you a little bit about that experience. The first day I brought my two girls to their Swedish elementary school. There were many challenges, but there were some things that were quite different about that school. We learned as we walked to the first day of school that most of the students biked to school. Literally, there were no lines of cars dropping off students. There were hundreds and hundreds of bicycles. Our girls went on field trips with their class on their bikes. Our 9-year-old and 13-year-old biked freely around our neighborhoods on safe paths. Every time the path crossed the road, it was on a speed bump, and there were paths everywhere. My commute to the university in Gothenburg involved biking to a nearby bus stop, catching the bus, which dropped me off at the train, which dropped me off right in front of the university. It was very slick. Now, I had also to buy these bikes on Blocket, which is the Swedish equivalent of eBay, and that was not quite so slick. Not speaking Swedish. And we had lots of interesting bike stories while in Sweden. This is just a small example of how I noted that Sweden constructed the physical community to accommodate multiple safe modes of transportation. Walking, biking, public transport. It stands in stark contrast to the single transportation mode communities that characterize some of our communities in the U.S. But getting back to Gustavus, environmental sustainability and being responsible environmental citizens permeates our whole curriculum at Gustavus, not just the environmental studies major. We realize our core values of excellence, community, justice, and faith cannot be fulfilled if we are not thoughtful stewards of the earth. In our ES program, we want students to be informed about the basic science, economic consequences, political positions, and history of environmental issues. We want our students to read classic environmental literature, consider great philosophers, establish an environmental ethic, and understand societal attitudes towards nature. We want our students to envision an environmentally sustainable world and imagine what it would take to get there. Alex did an excellent job describing an ideal Gustavus experience as an ES major. But as I mentioned, environmental sustainability permeates our whole curriculum. For example, faculty in biology, physics, and chemistry were recently awarded a grant to incorporate alternative energy and environmental sustainability into our lab curriculum. So students working in the lab are now making and analyzing biofuels while learning their lab techniques, using solar panels to study physics. Communication studies students, for example, taking the public discourse class, have done multiple environmental projects and community learning projects. We have classes on the philosophy of food. Two of our signature study abroad programs, the India program that Alex mentioned and the Sweden program, both have a very strong environmental focus. And our greatest celebration of academic excellence at Gustavus, the Nobel Conference, has had an environmental theme for the last 6 years. In 2007, we examined energy and climate. In 2009, world water resources. In 2010, food and how are we going to feed 7 billion people. And this year's conference, 2012, just a few days ago on the oceans. We have 7 different types of solar panels on campus, a small wind turbine, a local farm, energy conservation efforts, environmentally friendly coffee. We have signed the President's climate commitment, agreeing to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions by 80%. We have efficient lighting and high-efficiency windows in many of our buildings. We've done a lot. And our ES majors and my students in ENV 120, who I hope are listening on the web right now, know we can do lots more. It is our moral obligation to do more. We have the technology and resources to become an environmentally sustainable society. We need to make the moral choice to do more. And regarding the moral choices to do the right thing with the environment, I'd highly recommend going to the Nobel Conference website. All the talks from the Tuesday and Wednesday conference are online. I'd like you to listen to all the talks. But if you want to be challenged and inspired to examine your calling in life and the moral obligation of humans to protect the environment, listen to Kathleen Moore's talk. Very powerful. You'll be inspired and wowed by her eloquent words. Another Nobel speaker, Carl Safina, stated several times, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. With huge problems like climate change, we feel helpless and powerless. One of the most poignant questions asked at the Nobel Conference was by a young student who said, I'm 13 years old, what can I do to help? There's so much we can do to help. Our collective voices are powerful. Yes, we can strive to live a sustainable life, but we need to demand that our workplace, our city, our country be environmentally sustainable. That is what our students demand of Gustavus. That is what Sweden is striving for. As an academic institution rooted in our Swedish heritage, we have an opportunity to lead, and we want all of our students to see what can be possible and take that with them into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Christy Morris.
Your Majesty, Your Excellency, President Ole, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be part of this discussion. One of the greatest leadership challenges of our time is finding a way for people to live more sustainably as the global population heads for 9 billion. Throughout the world, increasing pressure on natural systems is causing catastrophic loss of species and degradation of biological diversity in the ecosystems on which people depend for food, fiber, water, and climate. Small colleges and universities play an important role in producing the future leaders. And here in the upper Midwest and in other parts of the world, Gustavus students will go. For these reasons, the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation supports leading colleges that integrate the greening of campus operations into multidisciplinary curriculum that seeks to ground every student in the principles of a lasting, healthy environment. I'm proud of my alma mater's work in this area. We believe that Gustavus is an important place to foster awareness of environmental issues among students and faculty and to incubate environmental stewardship programs, and we have provided support for these efforts. The Gustavus Environmental Studies program strives to equip students to continue sustainability wherever their lives lead them. Gustavus and the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation want to have a permanent impact far beyond the boundaries of this campus. As you've heard, the college boasts Big Hill Farm, a student-run garden that works to help Gustavus be an environmentally sustainable institution and encourages healthy eating habits. These efforts demonstrate that great ideas and successes don't strictly come from large universities or think tanks. They also come from communities, communities in which people bring intelligence, passion, and creativity to an issue. They come from places like Gustavus. I have been asked to share with you today what we have seen through our work at the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. The environment was a passionate interest of our founder, Margaret, and because she saw the urgency in this area, the environment program was the first one that we fully launched in 2010. Our environment program has two primary goals: to help enable local communities to sustain healthy ecosystems that perpetuate biodiversity and human well-being, and to support globally important ecosystems that are particularly vulnerable. We believe the environment is inextricably tied to community, that one cannot look at the environment in isolation. And that is why we choose to work at the community level, supporting the work being done to protect and preserve the environment. We believe that success at a community level, especially when replicated across multiple communities and regions, can and will have an impact on our broader environment. That is the vision that guides our grant making. I was also asked to address the issue of hope. Specifically, do I have hope that it's possible or likely that environments can be protected and that environmental sustainability will become a way of life? In other words, can we succeed? First, a caveat. The Margaret A. Cargill Foundation is at the beginning of a long learning journey. Our environment program began making significant targeted grants only a year ago. Environmental change requires a long-term commitment. Thus, I don't have great success stories or significant learnings to share with you, and I am neither a scientist nor an environmental expert. However, the short answer to the question is yes, I do have hope. I am hopeful because of the broad collaboration we have encountered as we have begun our work. In philanthropy, I am heartened by the willingness and even eagerness that other foundations have to share their information. I am particularly pleased that foundations often seek opportunities to address issues through partnership and not competition. Let me offer two examples. One of our first environment grants was to the Micronesia Challenge. This is an unusual effort of 5 Pacific Island nations to protect their land-based and marine life. We are impressed that 5 small but sovereign nations could and are willing to create a cross-border program. And within each country, governments have worked collaboratively down to the village level to make sure all affected people, such as local fishermen, understand the plan. Another example is our support of applied research as part of a collaborative effort by several large foundations to address environmental challenges in the Mekong Basin in Southeast Asia. The Mekong is home to 110 species of freshwater fish and 60 million people who rely on those fish as their primary source of protein. This ecosystem is in trouble due to the conversion of forests to plantations, hydropower dams, urban development, and climate change. Success will depend on the collaborative efforts of many players in order to strengthen community-managed forests, fisheries, and protected areas in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Secondly, I'm hopeful because most of these philanthropic investments are based on understanding that we must approach these environmental issues systemically. Our ecosystems and our economic systems are inextricably linked. Let me offer a couple examples of this. The Sundarbans seascape is a region of coral reef systems in the Pacific that holds the highest diversity of corals, fish, and marine species on our planet. It supports the livelihoods of communities spread across hundreds of small islands, and yet it is being ravaged by overfishing, destructive fishing, loss of habitat, loss of endangered species, and land-based pollutants that come from runoff. I personally traveled to this area of the Coral Triangle in Indonesia and witnessed the efforts to expand community-led networks of marine protected areas to improve fisheries management. It is our hope that these efforts will stabilize or increase the abundance and size of commercial fish species and address the human factors by improving socioeconomic indicators. In the United States, the Nature Conservancy has pursued a project to address concerns about overfishing in the Morro Bay area of California. The Nature Conservancy didn't challenge or make adversaries of the commercial fishermen. Instead, they bought fishing permits and fishing boats and became part of the fleet. Then these new fishermen invited other commercial fishermen to join in a conversation about dwindling fish populations, how to develop a plan to protect both the fish population and the livelihoods of the fishermen. People might have thought these two parties were natural enemies, but in fact, they have created a model for protecting areas threatened by overfishing and destruction of ocean floor habitat. If the problems were not daunting, we wouldn't be here today. Of course, the world's environments face substantial threats, which in turn threaten human and animal welfare. Almost daily, we hear of the amount of rainforests declining, arable land lost to desert, ice lost to warming temperatures. But through the efforts of many, we are getting more and better information about these threats to our environment and possible solutions. Our knowledge is coming from biology, chemistry, geography, and agriculture, a form of information collaboration in itself. And one last thing that gives me hope: the next generation. Young graduates of programs like those here at Gustavus know more about the environment than we ever learned. They know how to, and they want to use that knowledge for the rest of their lives. Surely that should give all of us hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Ambassador Hafström.
Her Majesty, President Olli, Swedish American friends, and dear students at Gustavus Adolphus College, thank you so much for inviting me to speak on a topic that is very important to the government of Sweden and to all Swedes. I seize every opportunity to share how vital it is to take care of our environment and to leave a sustainable environment for generations to come. On behalf of His Majesty, may I extend His Majesty's appreciation for this seminar, the fine remarks, but most importantly, for the commitment that Gustavus Adolphus had made to environmental sustainability. Words are wonderful, but action speaks far louder. We are pleased to learn how much this college and its graduates are doing to help protect and defend the world's resources. Sweden's reputation of being an environmentally friendly country really began when we hosted the first United Nations Conference on the Environment in 1972 in Stockholm. More about the conference will come in a moment. But first, a little about Sweden and our environmental reputation. Yes, Sweden focuses on environmental sustainability, but I must be honest, we have also suffered our share of irresponsible exploitation of nature and the environment. Political actions, though, and tougher legislation have brought Sweden a long way, and now we are all conscious of the need to protect the environment. Because Sweden takes the challenge of climate and energy supply security very seriously, We have also set high goals. Sweden's vision is to have a sustainable and resource-efficient energy supply with no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050. Sweden has been able to decrease the use of fossil fuel from 80% in the 1970s to 40% today. Fossil fuels for heating will be completely phased out by 2020. But we are still very dependent on fossil fuels for transportation. This has to change dramatically because Sweden wants a fossil fuel-free car fleet by 2030. Steps are being taken to achieve that goal by using economic tools such as the carbon tax and investing in technologies such as biogas and electric vehicles. Sweden has succeeded, I might say, in combining aggressive climate and energy policies. For instance, since 1970, Sweden has cut carbon dioxide emissions by a third, while GDP has more than doubled. This shows that it actually is possible to decouple economic growth and greenhouse gas emissions. Minnesota is more than welcome to be part of our continuing that growth in years to come. Environmental diplomacy has been marked by great milestones in a series of international conferences. The fourth in this series was held in Rio de Janeiro in June this year. As I mentioned earlier, the first UN conference on the human environment was held 40 years ago in Stockholm. The Stockholm Conference legitimized the environment as an area of both national and international concern and cooperation. Civil society participation was directly supported, and that was a first for a UN event. Outputs included the Stockholm Declaration, the Stockholm Action Plan, the establishment of the United Nations Environmental Programme, and a new global understanding. In the summit in Johannesburg in 2002, the Swedish government, together with the Swedish Trade Council, presented the concept of sustainable city. This initiative has led to the development of Symbiocity, which is a network of Swedish organizations and companies that promotes holistic and sustainable urban development. The 1972 conference was commemorated at Stockholm Plus 40 in April. His Majesty's participation in both of these conferences shows that environment has always been one of His Majesty's priorities. His Majesty's is applying cutting-edge ecological farming practice on one of his properties in Sweden. And in cooperation with the Swedish University of Agricultural Science, His Majesty experimenting with innovative methods in the field of horticulture and forestry. Two of the main messages to come out of the April conference in Stockholm were stop talking and start acting. Clear actions and targets are imperative. Another important message from the Stockholm Plus conference was that including young people would bring new ideas, social and technical innovations, and stable and social cohesion. And it was emphasized that the government have an important role in enabling the participation of young people in shaping a sustainable future. Again, I am pleased with the emphasis that this academic institution and its students put on these issues. Last but not least, I would like to mention a great example of how Sweden and the United States can work together in areas of mutual interest. The Swedish-American Green Alliance, in short SAGA, was established in 2010 by the Swedish government and the US Embassy in Stockholm. The objective of SAGA is to increase the exchange of knowledge and promote trade, research, and investments in environmental technology. For example, Sweden and Minnesota have several joint bioenergy projects within the framework of SAGA. This dialogue will continue on Sunday at a bilateral roundtable at the American-Swedish Institute, at which my American counterpart, Ambassador Mark Brzezinski, and I will participate. We will discuss future clean energy collaborations between Minnesota and Sweden. We look forward to finding ways to form partnership with Gustavus Adolphus, to share the best of what Sweden has to offer, and to learn from Gustavus Adolphus what is working well. To the organizers and the participants of this seminar, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, we need your participation. And so what I'm going to ask is that we are going to take a little more than 5 minutes, and I'm asking you to turn to someone near you. If you don't know them already, please introduce yourself and talk about what you've heard up here. Maybe you have a question you can formulate together and then write on the card and send up. Or you may want to stop talking and take action and decide right here what it is you're going to do next and tell us what that's going to be on the card. So I will be timing you. I will bring you back together. Feel free to get noisy and talk to each other. Those watching on the web, maybe you can grab someone in your hallway and start talking right now. And we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're going to bring you back together again here. I'm going to be mindful of the time. Just make sure we stay on track. Thank you for your great questions already. We'll keep them coming up, and I'll see how many we can work in. There is so much to say after hearing our great panelists here give us food for thought, and you obviously have been thinking about what to ask them right back. I have to say that when my family traveled to Sweden, Jeff, we had a similar experience. We were amazed by the biking and the walking. And His Majesty, I think Big Hill Farm really is modeled after all of those plots that are on the outsides of the towns with the gardens and the little garden houses. It really is a beautiful and wonderful thing to see people growing their own food. So I think I'm going to start right away with Ambassador. We have the first question for you. I will stay up here and we'll take the questions and try to not have everyone answer the question if possible. Ambassador, what emerging green technologies does Sweden see as possessing the most promise moving forward to decrease dependency on fossil fuels? And this, actually someone signed this, Kyle Maloney, who's a student here at Gustavus. So, Ambassador?
I think it's a mix, as everything. You know, it's a mix of, my country is a mix of nuclear, it's a mix of hydro, it's a mix of renewable. But mostly, it's the focus of innovation and new technique. That is, I mean, take, for example, shale gas. We were talking about shale gas was not on the table 10 years ago. It's come up with a new technique. With, of course, it's not perfect from an environmental point of view, but it's there. It might decouple your dependence on the Middle East. So, but if you go back to the question, I think there's a lot of focus in Sweden today about biogas. Use the management waste and produce gas and sell that to the market. Mm-hmm. What we've shown, it was a tough ride when we started off by saying that we were going to emit CO2 gases. But what we have shown is we've shown the business community that is something for them in new technologies, in green technologies, in biogas. And when the business community is starting to act, then a lot of things is happening. So I think it was a good example to show them that, yes, if you want to be part of this train, man, you better jump on. And that's a very important signal.
That's excellent. It's a nice segue to this question. And Jeff, I think I'm going to have you probably start, and Alex, if you can chime in on this question. What is being done at Gustavus to educate business students, business majors, about the policies that impact the environment? Not just selling green goods, but green practices.
You know, I would, there's been a trend. We had 3 or 4 environmental studies, economics, double majors last year. And you know, an economics student can look and say, well, the biggest business in the world is the fossil fuel industry. And we are going to be replacing those fossil fuels with some alternatives. And it might be good to learn about some of those. It's the biggest opportunity that you may have. So I think it goes hand in hand. And we certainly have economics professors that contribute to the environmental studies program, and it is not lost on our students that there's economic and environmental connections. Yes.
So there's a whole cluster of questions here around politics, a subject near and dear to my heart. And so
mine too.
Yours too, Ambassador.
Thank you.
It is, I think I'll try to roll them in and try to get other people involved in this. But, you know, what has happened politically in Sweden that has made this change possible? And how do you sustain the momentum for that change with the laws and regulations and being able to have those strong positions? And then I'm going to add a couple things in for others here.
I would say 3 things. Despite a center-right government or a center-left government, you need leadership. You need political leadership. You need really to focus. and you mean to act accordingly. Secondly, I think it's very important to have some sort of political consensus. Sweden is a small country. When we have a problem in Sweden, we usually set up a committee, and the committee is working, and out come a good, for most cases, proposal, and that is then dealt in the parliament, and out come a fairly good, proposal, and that we can implement. So despite we don't have what you have in this country, this political, all the time, no, yes. We try to be pragmatic, we try to be decent, we try to work things through, and yeah, Jack, we are decent people. And then the third thing, as I said before, to show the business community that there is something for them in this change of environment, green technology. If you take these three things, I think you are on the right track.
Excellent. Christy, I'm going to get to you next, but I do have to read this because I read it last night and I was trying to remember where it came from, but I knew it was the New York Times, and it was Nicholas Kristof's article from, I think, a couple of days ago. And probably the ambassador and His Majesty know well about this study. But last year, a study published from scholars at Harvard Business School and Duke University asked Americans which country they would rather live in, one with America's wealth distribution or with Sweden's. But they weren't labeled Sweden and America. It turned out that I was actually low on my number when I said this to you. 90% of Americans preferred to live in a country with the Swedish distribution. I think it's fascinating. He goes on to talk about inequality and some of the things that you just talked about, Ambassador. Christy, are you seeing and tracking through the philanthropy that the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation is doing the work around systems change through the political arm as well? I know that may not be the major goal, but the work that's being done, is it starting to lead to conversations of laws and regulations being changed?
Yeah, our organization is community-based. We do community-based work. We create situations where we can monitor what's going on, provide evaluative information and metrics on what's happening to those organizations who do the political side much better than we do. That is not our forte, and that isn't where we're going to be experts. But those people who are going to the governments abroad and to the policymakers need good information to go to them and say, this is why you need to change, and this is the effect that it will have on the livelihoods of the people who are living in this place. We approach environmental challenge as not only preservation of the environment, but also preservation of the people and their ability to survive in that place on Earth. So our role is to bring that information to people who do the political side. But yes, I think there's a wider recognition. You see it in a program that was completed, I think it was last year, Forever Costa Rica, which actually created protected areas around Costa Rica, and it was the result of fisheries information and research that had been done. It was good science that brought it.
Excellent. Alex, how do we change politicians' minds about the issues you so eloquently talked about?
Alex.
How do we make the difference politically when laws are at stake and regulations are needed for some of these changes?
For me, I think that a fundamental part of it has to do with thinking about who we hear from now, and then flipping that over to think about who we don't hear from. I think there are a lot of perspectives in our political situation in this country that we just do not hear. And a term that has come up in all the classes, no matter what department, and it came up a lot over Nobel too, is this concept of externalities, which is this idea of, well, we created this thing that's probably a problem, but we'll just put it over here and not think about it. I think we're starting to realize a little bit late that it will be a problem for us. It is a problem for other people now, and that's a justice issue. So we need to think about all of the things that we are externalizing right now, and that trickles through environmental issues, that trickles through economic wealth distribution issues, that trickles through political voice issues, and we need to make a real dedicated action to bringing all the voices to the table. Because, I mean, ask anyone how to make a good decision, and you say, well, you consider all of the evidence and you weigh it and then you make a decision. We're not weighing all the evidence right now because we don't think we should, or we don't want to see the evidence.
And that's a really good place to go to a question for Jeff. And there were many questions about how Nobel's latest topic fits into Sweden. I'm going to suggest that we collect all the questions and that maybe there will be a way to get some answers back to people. There's a lot of specific questions, His Majesty, about what is happening in Sweden and how these changes are taking place. And I think people would love to have those answers, but we're not going to be able to do it in like the last 4 to 5 minutes we have left here. But I do think this is an intriguing question, especially when you consider that Gustavus, with the 48th Nobel just ending and the 49th Nobel next year, has probably been in Minnesota one of the largest ways that the public interacts with science, science research, public dialogue around science, mathematics, and technology. And so this question has to do with perhaps the biggest issue is not what we can do, but overcoming the overwhelming percentage of the population who refuse to acknowledge scientific facts. And often because of, maybe it's, this writer says, maybe it's ignorance, maybe it's religion, maybe it's both, maybe it's other things, things like climate change are not really being paid attention to here. How do we elevate the understanding and maybe integration of science into the actions we're taking? You're going to be a MacArthur Fellow after you answer this question, Jeff Jeremiason.
We do whole classes discussing that exactly. I mean, not just one class period, whole classes trying to figure out what the answer to that is. And you know, my feeling on that has changed over time. I had the classic scientist view that, well, yeah, we're just going to examine the evidence and then it's a logical decision. But that's not the way it works. I don't think people understand that science is a process of understanding, and if people aren't engaged in the process of understanding, then science isn't going to work. And how we get to people engaging in the conversation in science is through what Alex was saying, is through community. I mean, people need to feel part of what they are, of where they live, and part of their community, and that they have power to make a difference in the decision. And then that changes it. And then things could happen. But getting to that point is still very difficult. Yes. So I wish I had the answer. I'd lay up at night trying to think of that answer.
I think that's part of our work going forward. I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I have 2 actions that people have sent up that they are doing. And then I know I have to call the president back up for us to close here. So these 2 questions I'm going to merge into one. What actions can Gustavus take, based on your comments, to do even more, have a more sustainable community? Alex, Jeff?
I think that a couple things are already in motion, which people may or may not know about. One of the biggest ones in my remarks, I mentioned the pretty substantial amount of food that goes to waste every day here, and something that's been in the works for, well, since we started working with the Cargill Foundation, is our plans to get a composter. And I think that, well, once that is up and running, that will overnight eliminate that food waste. And it won't eliminate in the sense that all that energy went into the food and people still threw it away, but it at least won't get burned or buried. It will get converted back into essentially dirt nutrient-rich dirt at that, and that will go into the soil at Big Hill Farm, that will go into the grounds of Gustavus, and it will close a very important loop that is wide open right now. So that's one of the things that I'm most excited about.
Great. Jeff, can you add?
Yeah, I can add. I think there's real excitement. I'm still, after the Nobel conference, still on a high adrenaline high. I'll probably crash tonight, but yeah, we've been. I mean, we keep track. Here's a scientist. We keep track of our, our indicators. Our greenhouse gas emissions. We keep track of the miles that we drive. We're trying to keep track of the miles that we fly, and how much natural gas and how much electricity we use. And by golly, we're gonna get a wind turbine somewhere close to this campus that is going to be providing electricity to us someday. We have tried, and we have been shut down, and some of us have sometimes lost. We've been refused at many different levels, but we are going to get that done. And we have these new solar panels on campus, and the price of solar is continuing to go down, and we're going to be moving forward on all those fronts.
That's excellent.
And it's just it's the will of the community, and it's going to happen.
Great. Now, I hope I don't totally embarrass these two students, but if you would you stand, or people who are in the audience who said these things? My action step: I will start a community vegetable garden at the family health clinic I work at. Where are you? Just stand and be recognized for taking a step. Yay. Someone else said, I will rely on companies that offer car rentals for non-frequent drivers, especially weekend rentals, and I will rely primarily on bicycles and public transportation in the city I live in. Where are you? Who wrote that? That's a wonderful thing. Sadly, we're out of time, but I hope that you heard thought-provoking ideas, you were inspired today, you gained energy from this, and most of all, you have more hope. Thank you.
I would like to thank the members of the panel. Margaret, thank you for moderating this. I'm like you, Jeff. It's still continuing from our Nobel 48 and the discussions. I think that Gustavus is demonstrating that we have a voice and there's an opportunity for us. Your Majesty, you have given us an opportunity here today to bring people together. That is significant because we as a community have to begin a discussion. There are no just solidly right or wrong answers. It's about asking the questions and engaging people in a discussion. Because if you get this, Mr. Ambassador, you don't win. There is no way to win when people are butting their heads or saying yes or saying no or I won't do it your way. It's about making sure that we as a community come together. Christy, what you're doing at the foundation is phenomenal. Thank you for the support you have given to us, naturally, but thank you for what you're doing in the world. What the Margaret A. Cargill Foundations are going to be able to do is going to be phenomenal, and that's going to make a difference in our world. Alex, you've got it made. It's ahead of you. You know, you're graduating, and you can take an opportunity now to really sort of use what you've received here and take it the next step. And Ambassador, you represent a country that we all love in so many ways. Yes, we probably would have all voted in that poll to be about the same place those 90% were. But this is a great time. I'm going to ask that we stand in just a minute and thank His Majesty with applause as he and Bishop Bonnier enter out the center aisle. He needs to get to the motorcade so he can get up to the cities and do some things, and we'll be having a dinner up there with some other folks. This has been a wonderful day for Gustavus Adolphus College, for Sweden, and for their Majesties. Thank you so much. Please stand.